Now we're shifting a focus a little bit towards maintaining applications. We've seen those vague one-star reviews from users who are not very happy with our apps. Our next speaker here shows us a better way to handle them. James is a senior mobile engineer at REA Group, and he will show how targeted observability and alerting can help us solve user issues faster. Please give him a warm welcome.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. So as mentioned, I'm going to be going through how we at REA Group have approached this and how we've tried to reduce our incident response time through targeted app observability and alerting. So to start with, I'm going to throw a couple questions, hopefully. Are your users having a great experience? So it's very important that the users of your app are having a great experience, not just an experience, right? Like anyone can just put an app together and then ship it out and then it'll run, or maybe it won't. And maybe you'll know and maybe you won't. But are all your users having a great experience? Can you answer that right now? What about most of your users? You need more data to answer this question. And what about if they're having a bad experience? Can you answer that right now? And how do you know? What do you look at to find out this information? And when you're in a large organization, how do you prove it? So how do you prove what you need to work on to the people that make the decisions? And then how do you improve it? So you've come and said that there's something wrong. How are you going to show what you need to do to fix it? At REA, we've been through 4 phases so far in our journey to observe the way that the world experiences property. Those 4 phases, we started with the Google Play. So in the Google Play console, and you can see down there, we have a 1-star review with a very descriptive reason. So we'd like to mention here, we do have other really good reviews as well. This isn't the only review we have. And then we moved on to a basic New Relic SDK integration. This talk is not sponsored by New Relic at all, but we do use that for many of our platforms. So it features heavily in some of the screenshots you'll see and the demonstrations we'll go through. We then moved to an app-wide approach where we looked more into the app as a whole and the business context that we developed for. So we'll talk about that a bit more. And then at the moment, we're looking into screen level reporting. So we're looking at what's going on in the app from different screens and experiences, which is what we call a collection of screens that form a user journey. Today, we're going to look at each of these phases. What did it look like? What value did it unlock for us as a business by doing this phase? What limitations did we encounter while we were doing it? And ultimately, what led to the decision to go to the next phase as well? And finally, how did it perform during the incidents that we have at REA? So I'm a senior software engineer, as mentioned. I work here at REA. Thank you all for coming. And I think I'm the first REA speaker of the day. I don't know if someone else is doing one in the other room right now. But I work on the app platform team. So prior to my work at REA, I worked at Leidos, which was a defense contractor. I worked on a lot of web, backend, databases, DevOps. So it was just a wide range of technologies. We used Elasticsearch for our reporting, and using Kibana, we created dashboards to show how our application was running. And they ran in Kubernetes, not that it matters for this talk, but just to show there's lots of exposure to different things in here. So as a defense contractor, there was a high system availability focus because you're making things that need to be mission critical, and they're very important for the safety of the people using them. Coming to REA Group, I had a focus on mobile and a bit of backend. I was very surprised at the amount of observability that was on the app itself, which is actually quite low. It wasn't high at all. There was a lot of observability in the backend space for APIs, and it's a very mature space. And during this, we moved towards, as I'm going to mention, toward New Relic to try and bridge some of those gaps. As a platform team member, so the platform team, if you were here a couple of years ago, Elisha Lee gave a great talk on our app as a platform. So the platform team sits around here. So this is the app shell view that he mentioned a couple of years ago. If you weren't here, basically we work on the configuration of the application for routing and then also the core capabilities for our MFEs. So the MFEs are our experience layer. And there's like at least 40 developers that work over those specifically, but also others that federate in. So it's quite a large team and it's complex pieces. So my responsibility in the team was to work on the app shell, so that fundamental layer, but also on the core capabilities that we've created so that these teams could leverage those instead of rewriting everything. So before we start and look at all this, you should know that by making your app alertable and observable, you will become happier and more productive. That's amazing, right? Everyone wants that. You'll also appear knowledgeable about your app, at least appear knowledgeable, you know, like not everyone knows everything, right? So you can only do your best, but at least you can answer some of the sticky questions. You'll accelerate your root cause analysis. So this talk that I'm giving today is very focused on what these different phases meant for our root cause analysis for the things that were going wrong within the app. And you also get back your time to focus on making cool things. So not everyone likes looking at like dashboards and charts and digging into those problems that are difficult to replicate. Some people just love writing cool code and making cool things. So this gives you back more time to do that. But isn't this already common practice? So as I mentioned before, it's actually quite common to see these kind of things already for backend and web teams where they have usually a single main production application running or server running and then the front end as well. Whereas it's not as common in the mobile space. You'll get some stuff for free that we'll talk about in a second, but it's not as common that there's investment into this. And the existence of the multiple mobile platforms like iOS, Android, and then app versioning as well. You can have many apps in the wild at one time. It adds complexity to how you can approach this. But enough talking, more live demonstrations. So, what are we going to do? We're going to look to start with at what we actually have, right? So this is currently what we have within our REA space. It's not real. You know, this is all mocked up. So please don't go pointing at things and being like, oh, that chart's really high. You should look at that. Like, yep. If there is stuff in there that's like that, it's not the right numbers as well. So just as in an effort to, you know, show what I can without exposing the real problems, I guess. So we have this start here. This is a dashboard within New Relic. So if you haven't used New Relic before, it's a platform that retrieves app metrics during your app's runtime. It's an SDK that you integrate into your app or into your website or many different areas. So what this is, though, it's a custom dashboard that we've created. So we have different ways of using it, but effectively it covers the main business context that we care about as, in my case, the app platform team, but it also answers those questions about what's going on within your app. It's got lots of documentation. We're not going to go through all of it, but the purpose of this is just to familiarize people that are entering this for the first time. So they might be technical, but they might not. So they might need to know what they can actually see in this and what they're going to look at and what they can do with it as well. One of the critical pieces here is it also has the ability to swap between our different platforms. So you can see at a glance what's going on in your app. If I swap over to this tab here, it's called Critical Health Metrics. So at a glance, we can see what's going on within the app. There is some provisions of this kind of stuff that New Relic provides out of the box, but it's not as targeted to the things that we care about at REA. So that's marrying together that technical ability from New Relic to provide hooks to that data into what we actually care about and what we want to be reporting on and quickly actioning, right? So if I look quickly within the screen, you can see we have stuff about the degraded user experience, so things that we want to have a look at sooner rather than later. And then we also have other tabs as well, right? So I'm not going to touch on this too much right now, but this is kind of where we're at the moment. And we have future phases to expand upon this that will go on in a second. So bringing us back to the boring slides, enough talking, more live demonstrations is done. So now it's time to explore each phase that we've gone through in our journey that we touched on before. So the first phase that we had was the Google Play and app reviews. So we talked about this briefly, but let's look at what was good about it and what we found that was limiting that we wanted to go further with. So it does cover the critical Android app health. So it does do like really good stuff with crashes, ANRs, like application not responding errors that you might get. and the Play Store reviews that come through. So you can see all of that stuff within that store. It does do time series visualizations, so the charts, which is really useful because you can share those, you can look at them over time, and you can see things that change. And it does compare your app to others in your category. This is the one thing that the New Relic platform doesn't do, because it doesn't know what else is going on within the Android store, because it doesn't have access to that. It's not owned by Google or anything, so it doesn't have any of that. It is limited to critical health of your app. So the critical health being like if there's big crashes and that kind of thing, right? It doesn't start looking at things like your network requests properly, or you can't drill down into things as deep. And the alerting criteria is unclear and inflexible. In fact, it's very limited. So you can get notifications in general when things start crashing. That's kind of what you get with it. You can't say like which crashes you care about, or you can't say when to alert. It's just there's a checkbox you tick and you start getting emails. It's also limited to your Android app. So if you have an iOS variant, this won't be the place to look at it. So you can see these are some visualizations, and there's also a comparison to your peers' median for different things, but this is just an example of what Android version that they're using. And these are some of the reviews. So not a lot of these, or none of these, I think, actually give you a good reproductive use case. You still have to go look at all the different crashes that are going on your app. If it's a crash, some of these wouldn't be a crash because one of the efforts that we make is to not crash the app. So how do you go and try and replicate these without anything to look at within the Play Store, within Play Console? But what grade does it get during incidents? So someone has to notice something's gone wrong. This is one of the main things that is not great, right? Someone has to look at this, someone has to spend their time on it and remember to look at it. And what if someone's off for the day or something, right? It's just not what we want to be doing as developers as well. You have to manually sift through the crashes on the Play Console and try and do your own exploration if possible. It's also not immediately clear if the platform problem is cross-platform. Like what if you have a backend system? Is it coming from there? Is it coming from your app implementation? If it's caused by networking, you're pretty much out of luck. Good luck. User impact is unclear at the end of this. The priority for your incident, if that's how your organization does it, is unclear, and then pretty much everything's unclear. The average time that you would spend on this if you had a larger app like we do is like more than 6 hours, because it's so difficult. If you have to either cut it early because you say, oh, well, I can't go from here, or if it's like a major problem, you just have to keep going because it's a massive problem, right? Not great. I wouldn't want to do it this way, especially for an app of our size. This is how I feel if I have to do it this way, which I have had to in the past. That brings us to our phase 2. So we did an out-of-the-box New Relic SDK integration. It was pretty simple to set up, which was great. But what we wanted out of it was more information about what's actually going on within the app. And that includes stuff like our HTTP requests that we were sending, any distributed tracing. So you can see as long as you have it integrated into your other platforms or your other servers and stuff, you can actually see how it goes through the system with distributed tracing using like an interaction ID. And then you can set up alerts as well, and they're very customized, right? So that brings us to the good parts, very flexible alerting. So you can set up alerts on custom facets or thresholds, pretty much whatever the app pushes back, and it gives back stack traces, it gives back crash locations and stuff like that. So you can split those alerts as well based on your business context and requirements. So if you care about authentication problems or crashes due to authentication, you can look at those specifically. It captures your network requests, so you can see when things start going wrong from a network level. And you can also capture custom events. So when you have a bigger app, you have more screens, more teams that are looking at that. They can report on their own custom stuff. And it provides a single source of truth, as long as you're using it for your different platforms. Unfortunately, it is business domain agnostic, right? So none of the charts provided out of the box know anything about what your app does. They just know that you have an app, right? So you can see lots of things from it, but it's not great for customizing those views because you can't. And you can't see your overall system health at a glance. You still have to go through multiple of these different dashboards that they provide and then put all that information together somehow. This is the kind of stuff you can get out of it. The left here, we have a Slack message that's sent as an alert, and it's just telling us that something's going wrong with our upstream API systems. The middle one here is a chart that looks at, can't quite see it very well, but it's just the average response time for the app to a certain API based on the percentile of users experiencing that request time. And finally, it's just an example of the query language that you can use to create like charts and custom visualizations over specific data. So during the incidents, we did get alerted, or we do get alerted to the critical app crashes immediately, right? So that's really good. Like this is a major improvement to before, because we can see anything that's causing major issues will come through straight away to, we use like PagerDuty, which is like a system that people look at and then they get alerted and someone's on roster and then they can immediately respond. You can view the generic dashboard to find patterns. The network requests and failures, as I mentioned, are all available. Someone with, it's called NRQL, it's their query language. It looks a bit like I showed before, so a little bit like SQL. They can write a query to show the user impact. Miles has said recently that apparently you can also use AI to help write these. So all of that documentation is public, so it's been trained on it, so it can help you with those as well. So whoever wrote this, as in whoever wrote this query, can then share a link that is like a permalink basically, so anyone else can click on it and then they can see that query and the chart that it creates. So similar charts are hopefully made during an incident by people that know about the other systems, but there's no guarantee of that. It depends who's available at the time and who's on call, or any of those kind of things. You do get a good idea of user impact, and the priority can be decided pretty well. So that from a business standpoint, that's really good, because it's important to know how many users are impacted, how many people do we have to throw onto this to get it over the line at the moment. And if you were to do this, you'd probably spend like an hour, a bit more maybe, because you wanted to like verify, because you're writing these queries yourself, for instance, they haven't been vetted and they haven't been tested in these environments before. So you have to make sure that they're good because you're presenting this data, right? You have to make sure that you can back up what you're saying, and also that you haven't overlooked anything specific. So I gave this one a C. So it's too slow to find the cause still, because you still have to do this custom queries. You still have to do custom investigation into these different dashboards. And it's a bit too reliant on the custom queries and having people that kind of know how to write them. Still a bit better though. So I'd still recommend this over, or something similar to this, maybe not New Relic, whatever you want to use, something that can capture these additional things. But what about problems that don't crash the app? So as I mentioned, we want to limit as much as possible how much the app crashes, because it's just terrible for user experience. So the next part, then, this is currently what we have implemented at REA, is an app-wide dashboard and then custom alerting for that kind of stuff. So what was good about it? So the alerts link to targeted custom charts. So you can set up your alerts, and you can then set up charts that represent those alerts basically. So if someone gets an alert, they can jump into the dashboard and then they can see at a glance, okay, well, the spike what happened there. We can see like throughout other areas of the app, we have like a correlation, that kind of stuff, right? So you have it all at a glance when you come onto the dashboard. The visualizations are linked to business domains. So what this essentially means is if you get a thing saying there's been extra crashes, or maybe not even crashes, if there's an increase in handled errors that you don't expect to see, you can see, okay, well, it happened within, for instance, our navigation framework that we're using. So it instantly narrows down the scope, and it means that you can more effectively bring that to the table and say, like, we need these people involved. All right? So it's clear when the app itself is unstable. And the reason I say the app itself is because we are an app as a platform. It means like it might not be the experiences or the screens that are causing failures. So it might be the app itself, like something's gone wrong. Maybe there was a version upgrade or something that has been causing problems. And it's accessible and clear at varying levels of technical expertise. So you could share links to people in your product teams. You can share it to like senior management or whatever, right? They can see at a glance what is happening, and they don't need a deep understanding of the actual area and the code implementation to know what's going on. And this brings me to the final piece, which is for people in product roles. They have to report, at least at REA, on what's going on within those experiences or those screens. So they can ask people to set up like a custom set of charts, and then every month they just snip it, right? So it reduces that overhead on anyone that's the technical side, because they don't have to do it for them every time, right? So You saw before that the area was also surrounded by like clear documentation around it. Very important to have this kind of stuff. Otherwise, it's just a black box of charts and numbers, and you don't really know what's going on. Maybe the person that wrote it does. It's not great. But there's no view over screen performance. So I mentioned before that we're an app as a platform. So we have lots of different screens that are built on top of that. So there's no view over that. So all these teams still don't know what's going on in their area of the app. There's no inbuilt way to correlate events to those custodian teams. So we can't look at a glance, see, okay, that happened. For instance, if it's not from a specific package that you can see the package name of, or if it starts somewhere else, then we can't see what's going on there. This is just you kind of already seen the dashboard. So this is just some of the tabs that we have available. So these like are our kind of business domains that we have decided at REA that we care the most about at the moment. Right, so this would be different for different organizations, different apps. You know, like you might have your own specific things that you care about, and that's kind of the beauty of being able to make these custom visualizations. There's also time series stuff. So just because it just happened doesn't mean it disappears. You can then go back and have a look at it for your like we have like post-incident reviews where we go back and see what happened, and then also what we could have done differently. You know, all that kind of rapid improvement. So yeah, I'll quickly show a couple more of those charts that we had. So you can see that we have these things on crashes as well. Something here is like for the latest release, we have stuff like what's happening in the latest app release version. Just because we do a rolling release, so we use this to make sure that everything is still healthy as we're going through, or at least within the acceptable bounds, and then we triage using that as well. And then, for instance, like crashes here as well. So each of these tabs are made so that you get the higher end view on the left, and then it slowly kind of splits into different areas based on what you then need to look at as you go through. So there's some of these that I can't click on because they talk about our domain APIs and stuff. So that stuff is still REA specific. But I can say, like, for instance, I think I've obfuscated most of this. So I got rid of anything that we can't look at, but you can see we have a good look over what authentication things are happening in the app, because we care a lot about that, because we care a lot about our user base maintaining that positive experience. No one likes having to relog in, you know, so this is something that we focus on personally. So what grade does it get during incidents? So we are alerted to degradations that affect the entire app immediately. The issues appear clearly within the custom dashboard. So if you are alerted to something, you end up here, and you can see things down here on the different alerts that we have. So we have different ways of dealing with them, what they might mean, how complex it would be if you wanted to look at it yourself. So that's useful because we don't, like, I'm on the app platform team, but not everyone that has alerts that go off are on the app platform team. So I understand the dashboards pretty well, but not everyone does. The charts are always examined for the cross-platform correlation. So when you have things like these critical health metrics, and we want to say like, oh, there's a degraded user experience, is it the same on iOS as it is on Android? Right? So if I click on the iOS one, all the charts are automatically updated, and we can see if there's correlation there, so that way it's quick for those incidents. So usually within the incident bounds, we'll take like one or many screenshots to visualize the impact. It's usually like once we figure out the specific area, we'll take a big screenshot and say, look, this is what's happening within the app at this time. And then we link to the dashboard as well. And because it's the dashboard doesn't usually change, so people get familiar with it as well as it comes through. We have really clear user impact at this point, because we know if they're just being affected on iOS, they're being affected on Android, what area of the app is being affected as well. And then we can very clearly define the priority as a result of that. Usually it's about 20 minutes in this. So you still want to have a look and make sure, because you still have to look at the different aspects of what's going wrong, right? You can't just look at it and say, okay, well, I can see a problem with the API, so it's definitely an API. Right? No, you have to still look at the surrounding context to figure out where the impact actually is. It's really good though. Like this has really reduced the amount of time that we have to spend during our incidents. So obviously this is the root cause analysis time. We still work together to fix the problem, but the decision from what to do next comes a lot quicker, and that's very important when you have a really high number of users as well. And then we have to talk about triaging. So we talked about how the different screens aren't obvious at this point. So we'll look at the next part. So this is what we're currently working on. So this is screen level dashboards and alerts. So each screen will have their own oversight into what's going on within that screen. And there are good and not so great parts of this, or limitations rather. So the screen performance is visualized. So you can see, like, if you own, I don't know if anyone's used the app, but if you own the screen for the property listing information, they will be able to see what the load time is for that screen. They can see between app versions if it's gone up and down, you know, so they can make decisions based on that. The problem ownership is mapped to a single business custodian. This is actually really important for us because we have so many teams that are federating into this app. So we need to have a clear way of knowing who's responsible for looking into this issue, instead of potentially having lots of people looking at the same thing but independently. So it's a good time saver. Each team can then own their own performance. So they have access to this, the dashboard that I'll show in a second, and they'll be able to look at that and they'll be able to see what's going on and what they need to improve. So it also leads to rapid root cause analysis. And mainly the benefit here is that if you're on a team and you see a major incident happen, you can quickly check if you need to be in that incident, because you can go and have a look at these custom dashboards that you have available to you. But there is no way to know at the moment when your screen is impacting another screen. So we have complex user flows and journeys that we expect them to take through the app. So there's no way at the moment of mapping those together. So if you see a problem, if you've used the app, you have to search and then you click on a result. If something happens in the search area, there's no way of immediately knowing that something's gone wrong for the results screen as well. The only visualization you'd have is that your traffic might go down, right? But it's not directly correlated straight away. And then finally, the crashes on background threads cannot be correlated to a team. I don't think, so I'm not sure what we would do about this, because sometimes you have things like a compose upgrade, and there might be transitive dependency problems that you'll see with that. And then something will just say compose UI failed. You know, it's failed to render. One we had was failed to render because a component has already been placed. Doesn't tell you, it doesn't go through and say, okay, well, it came from this screen. It just said on the background thread, we tried to render and it failed. So those ones are still very difficult to work through. These are some of the charts that we have available. We'll go through in a second. So this is an example dashboard of what these teams will have access to. So they have stuff about their API that they can see, their response time for that API. They can see any crashes that are, we call them MFEs, so they're front-end experiences, micro front-ends. So we can see what's happening per app version that we have, any error events, what app versions are having the most problems, you know, do we have to address any of these? And then their number of views. So this is very important to see, usually it's broken down by app version, but I haven't done that in this one. And we can see the screen load time as well. So as I mentioned before, it's broken down by percentiles. So most of the users are having a good experience, but then also sometimes you need to look at the users that aren't having a great experience, because you can still optimize for those as well. We also have other tabs on traffic, performance, and errors. So if you want to know what's going on, how many people are accessing it, how's it going in terms of those load times by version, who's having the worst load times. You know, all this kind of data is really good for driving those business discussions around what you should prioritize. Because if you are trying to say, we need to focus on this area because most people are having a good experience, but then you see these crashes that are causing bad app reviews, this is probably one of the causes, you know? So having this information available readily is very good for those kind of discussions. And finally, the error screen here is, so we have done something custom here where we're able to retrieve the name of the screen and stuff that is having problems, and then we can see the different breakdown of what errors are being raised as well. And we have this is a custom piece that we had to do, but the effect of this is that they are able to quickly see what's going on at a like an error-based level instead of having to sift through stack traces to see where it came from. They already know what errors they can throw. All right, what grade does this one get during incidents? Well, we haven't done it yet, so I can't actually say what we've done and how it's turned up, but this is all just having a go, I guess. But we presume that if it's set up properly, then they will be alerted to degradations per screen. So each of these teams will receive an automated alert, hopefully, about something going wrong within their screen. There will also be other alerts at the same time because the system is also observed at a higher level, right? So we can go from there and we can then triage very effectively. They can view the dashboard targeted to their screen. So they don't have to access the big one. They can access their own little one as well, which gives them a good view over their screen. The charts were then same. They'll be examined for correlation cross-platform. One or many chart screenshots taken to visualize the impact just like before, and then they can provide a link just like before. The main benefit here is that the ownership becomes clear because you can see what screen in the app is actually responsible for this problem. And hopefully it'll be amazing, right? And it'll only take 5 or 10 minutes because everyone will be able to quickly check their chart. They'll see what's going on, and then they can go from there, right? So usually we have like a channel dedicated to an incident, and then we go through there. So people will join when they know their team is being impacted or when their team is doing the impact. So really great. This is exactly how I imagine that it will go once it's done. Fingers crossed. And then finally, we talked about before, there's a limitation, which is that we don't know when the screen is impacted by another within the user journey. So I thought I'd do a quick analysis breakdown, I guess, just because there's lots of slides, but not many charts. So we look at this, and then we can say, like, when is it appropriate to use each of these? So this is just my opinion, of course, but feel free to disagree with me on these. But I'd still use the Google Play and app reviews if you only have an app that's owned by a single team, you just have the Android app, and you don't really have any API integrations, because you don't need a lot of that extra stuff at that point. It's, of course, if you have a massive user base, I think that's a good reason to start looking at more exhaustive options. Once you have a multi-platform app, though, and you have multiple teams owning code within that app or some API integrations as well, you probably want to start looking at a more robust solution and a more robust view over what's happening within your app. So that could be New Relic, or it could be anything else that you decide to do. It's up to whatever your business requirements are. And then once you have multiple API integrations, a more complex business domain, so this is when your product people might want to start asking questions, and they're like, oh, what's going on? This thing crashed here. Did it crash on iOS? And you're sitting there like a stunned mullet, like, I don't know, like probably okay, I don't know. So that's when you want to start looking at like having an app-wide view. And then finally, or not finally, but next one would be the complex screen structure. So the more complex your app is and the more stuff you have going on within it, the more you want to be able to break down those problems and assign ownership, because otherwise you are going to waste a lot of resources with different teams looking at the same thing in different ways when they could get that automatically. And then the final phase that we haven't done yet, this is something that we want to look into at some point, is the ability to see the impact on a screen from another screen. The root cause analysis just gradually gets faster as you have more information and visualizations available. That's it.
Yes, we have a couple of minutes for questions. Any questions?
Hi, mate. Loved the journey. It was really, really great to see. I'm keen to know, was Firebase ever considered at any point? And just, yeah, just what your thoughts are on that in general.
Yeah, so we did consider Firebase at one point. The thing that actually started making us look at New Relic was that something, I think it was before Firebase, it was called something else, and it migrated to Firebase. It was before my time here, but I do know that it was considered, but then I think at the time it wasn't quite available, so they decided to go down the New Relic path. I don't have the exact information about why the technical decision was made, but at the same time, when it was made, it was applied to multiple different services and stuff. So I presume they had a good reason, right? But I can't answer the question off the top of my head.
One question.
Thanks for the talk. One of the things I've seen, and it looks like it's happening here as well, is that what the business is driving with business analytics, or the sort of, what they're recording with analytics, is getting greater and greater as well. Do you see a point where one of them will win and, everything will just get pushed into New Relic and you can get rid of whatever I assume there's an analytics tool used as well, where it just ends up being one rather than, an analytics tool that's recording everything and a tech performance tool that's recording everything?
I don't personally see that happening, just because the desires of people that are looking at the analytics are quite different to the requirements from a technical perspective. Like, we're more focused on things that start going wrong, whereas they're more focused on the actual user journey and then also metadata attached to that. So I don't think New Relic is able to, or has the desire to, look at that piece as well. I'm sure there's others that might, but I suppose the answer is, at this point, I don't see them doing that because of the difference in requirements from both sides.